My girlfriend said she was just going for a walk on our anniversary. What I found in her phone changed everything. I'm 28 years old, and 2 months ago, I discovered that the woman I'd been planning to propose to had been living a double life that made everything about our relationship a complete lie. My girlfriend Autumn and I had been together for 3 years, and I thought I knew everything about her. Turns out, I didn't know her at all. Let me start from the beginning so you understand how carefully I'd planned what was supposed to be the most important night of our relationship. Our 3-year anniversary was approaching, and I'd been planning the perfect evening for weeks. Autumn had always complained that I wasn't romantic enough, that I didn't put enough effort into special occasions, so I was determined to prove her wrong. I'd made reservations at Romano's, the upscale Italian restaurant where we'd had our first official date. I'd arranged for the same table we'd sat at that night, contacted the manager to have them prepare a special dessert, and even bought a new suit for the occasion. But most importantly, I'd spent 2 months' salary on an engagement ring that I planned to use during dessert. Autumn and I had been talking about marriage for the past year. She'd been dropping hints about engagement rings, showing me pictures of wedding dresses, and making comments about how all her friends were getting married while we were still just dating. The pressure had been building, and I'd finally decided that our anniversary would be the perfect time to take the next step. I work as a welder at a manufacturing plant, and while the pay isn't spectacular, I'd been saving every extra dollar for months to buy Autumn the kind of ring she deserved. She worked as a receptionist at a dental office and was always talking about wanting nice things, expensive vacations, and the kind of lifestyle her friends with wealthy boyfriends seemed to enjoy. The ring I'd chosen was a compromise between what I could afford and what I thought would make her happy. It wasn't huge, but it was beautiful, and it represented a serious commitment to our future together. I'd hidden it in my sock drawer for 2 weeks, checking on it every morning to make sure it was still there and perfect. The morning of our anniversary, I was nervous but excited. I'd taken the day off work to prepare for the evening, planning to pick up flowers, get my suit dry cleaned, and maybe even write something romantic to say during the proposal. Autumn had seemed distracted lately, but I attributed it to work stress and the general pressures of adult life. I'm so excited for tonight, I told her over breakfast. Romano's at 7, and then maybe we can walk by the park where we had our first kiss. Autumn smiled, but something seemed off about her expression. That sounds wonderful, she said, but her voice lacked the enthusiasm I'd expected for such a special occasion. Are you feeling okay? I asked. You seem a little distant. I'm fine, she said quickly. Just tired from work. Dr. Peterson has been really demanding lately, and I haven't been sleeping well. I accepted her explanation because I wanted to believe everything was perfect for our anniversary. Looking back, I should have paid more attention to the signs that something was wrong. Around noon, while I was getting ready to run my errands, Autumn announced that she was going for a walk to clear her head before our big evening. She said she wanted to be in the right mindset for our anniversary dinner and needed some fresh air and exercise to shake off her work stress. I might walk down to the coffee shop and get something to drink, she said, grabbing her purse and phone. I'll be back in a couple of hours to get ready. I thought it was sweet that she wanted to be at her best for our anniversary. Take your time, I said. I have some errands to run anyway. I'll see you when you get back. Autumn kissed me goodbye, and I noticed she seemed more affectionate than she'd been in weeks. She held the hug a little longer than usual and told me she loved me with what seemed like extra emotion. At the time, I thought she was just as excited about our anniversary as I was. After she left, I spent the afternoon taking care of final preparations. I picked up the flowers I'd ordered, collected my suit from the dry cleaner, and stopped by Romano's to confirm our reservation and the special dessert arrangement. Everything was falling into place perfectly, but when I got home around 4 p.m., Autumn still wasn't back from her walk. I wasn't worried initially. She sometimes lost track of time when she was out with friends or running errands. But as 5 p.m. came and went, I started getting concerned. I tried calling her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent a text asking when she'd be home, but got no response. By 6 p.m., I was genuinely worried that something might have happened to her. That's when I noticed her laptop was still open on the kitchen counter, logged into her email account. Normally, I would never have looked at Autumn's private messages, but I was concerned about her safety and thought maybe she'd mentioned her plans to someone else. What I found when I glanced at her email changed everything I thought I knew about our relationship, our anniversary, and the woman I'd been planning to propose to that evening. The most recent email in her inbox was from someone named Greg, and the subject line read, "Can't wait to finally be together tonight." My hands started shaking as I realized what I was about to discover. The engagement ring in my sock drawer suddenly felt like the most naive purchase I'd ever made. I opened that email, and what I read destroyed 3 years of trust, love, and future plans in the space of about 30 seconds. I stared at that email subject line for a long moment, my brain refusing to process what "can't wait to finally be together tonight" could possibly mean on our anniversary. My first instinct was to close the laptop and pretend I'd never seen anything, but my hands were already moving to open the message before my rational mind could stop them. The email was dated that morning, sent just an hour after Autumn had left for her walk. As I read it, each word felt like a physical blow to my chest. Autumn, I can't believe this day is finally here. After months of planning and waiting, we're finally going to be together without having to sneak around. I've booked the room at the Marriott downtown, and I'll be there at 2 p.m. like we discussed. I know this is hard because of your anniversary with him tonight, but you said you were ready to make the break. I love you, and I can't wait to start our life together. See you soon. Greg. I read the email 3 times before the full meaning sank in. Autumn hadn't gone for a walk to clear her head before our anniversary dinner. She'd gone to meet another man at a hotel room. On our anniversary, while I was running around town making final preparations for the proposal that was supposed to mark the beginning of our future together. But that email was just the beginning. Once I started looking through Autumn's email account, I found an entire relationship that had been happening parallel to ours for the past 6 months. Greg wasn't just some random affair. He was someone Autumn had been planning a future with while pretending to build one with me. The emails went back to January, starting with what appeared to be innocent workplace flirtation. Greg worked for a software company that had been installing new systems at the dental office where Autumn worked. Their initial exchanges were professional, discussing technical requirements and installation schedules. But by February, the emails had become personal. Greg was asking about Autumn's weekend plans, and she was complaining about feeling unfulfilled in her current relationship. She described me as sweet but not ambitious enough, and said she was starting to realize she needed someone who could challenge her intellectually and financially. By March, they were exchanging phone numbers and making plans to meet for coffee. Autumn told Greg that she was in a long-term relationship, but was questioning whether it was the right fit for her future goals. Greg was recently divorced, financially successful, and apparently everything that Autumn felt was missing from our relationship. The April emails showed their relationship becoming romantic. Autumn described feeling more alive when she was with Greg, and he was encouraging her to end things with me so they could be together openly. But Autumn kept putting off the breakup, claiming she needed time to figure out the logistics of ending a 3-year relationship. What made the discovery even more devastating was reading Autumn's descriptions of our relationship from her perspective. She wrote about feeling trapped by my limited ambitions and frustrated by my blue-collar mindset. She complained that I was content with our modest lifestyle while she wanted to experience finer things in life. In one particularly brutal email from May, Autumn wrote, "He's planning something special for our anniversary, and I think it might be a proposal. The thought of being engaged to someone with such limited prospects makes me feel sick. I can't spend the rest of my life pretending to be happy with mediocrity." Reading those words while sitting in the apartment we shared, surrounded by the life we'd built together, was devastating. Everything I'd thought was real, our shared dreams, our love, our plans for the future, had been a performance on Autumn's part while she planned her escape with someone she considered more worthy of her time. The recent emails revealed that Autumn and Greg had decided our anniversary would be the perfect day for her to finally end our relationship. Their plan was for Autumn to meet Greg at the hotel, spend the afternoon together, and then come home to break up with me before our dinner reservation. "I'll tell him I've been thinking about our future and realized we want different things," she'd written to Greg just 3 days earlier. "It's better to end things now before he wastes money on an expensive anniversary dinner. I'll be free to be with you by tonight." But apparently, Autumn had changed her mind about the timing. In her most recent exchange with Greg that morning, she'd written, "I know we planned for me to break up with him today, but I'm having second thoughts about the timing. Maybe I should wait until after tonight so I don't seem completely heartless. But I'll still come to the hotel this afternoon. I need to be with you." So Autumn had decided to have her cake and eat it too. She was planning to spend the afternoon with her lover at a hotel, then come home and play the devoted girlfriend for our anniversary dinner, all while knowing she intended to dump me in the next few days. I sat in our kitchen, surrounded by the flowers I'd bought for our anniversary and the suit I'd planned to wear to propose, reading about how the woman I loved was describing our relationship as a burden she was planning to escape. The engagement ring in my sock drawer suddenly felt like evidence of the most expensive mistake I'd ever almost made. But more than that, it felt like proof of how completely I'd misunderstood the person I'd been sharing my life with for 3 years. I checked the time. It was 6:30 p.m. Autumn would probably be home soon from her hotel rendezvous, ready to play the loving girlfriend for our anniversary dinner while secretly planning our breakup. But I wasn't going to sit there and let her perform one final act of deception. I had a different plan for how our anniversary evening was going to unfold. I closed Autumn's laptop and sat in our kitchen for about 20 minutes, trying to process the magnitude of her betrayal while deciding how to handle the situation. My first instinct was to pack my things and disappear, leaving her to figure out what had happened when she came home to an empty apartment. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that would let her off too easily. Autumn had spent months lying to me while planning her exit strategy with another man. She described our relationship as mediocre and our future as something that made her feel sick. She'd been using our anniversary as cover for an afternoon with her lover while preparing to dump me after letting me waste money on an expensive dinner. I decided she deserved to face the consequences of her choices directly. I took the engagement ring out of my sock drawer and put it in my jacket pocket, not because I planned to propose, but because I wanted her to see exactly what her deception had cost both of us. Then I printed out several of the most damaging emails between Autumn and Greg, including the ones where she described me as having limited prospects and where they'd planned to use our anniversary for their affair. At 7:15 p.m., I heard Autumn's key in the front door. I was sitting at our kitchen table with the printed emails spread out in front of me, waiting for her to discover that her double life had been exposed. "Hey baby, I'm sorry I'm so late," she called out as she walked in. My walk turned into coffee with a friend, and we totally lost track of time. "I need to shower quickly, and then we can head to dinner." Her voice was bright and cheerful, like someone who'd spent the afternoon at a hotel with her lover and was now ready to play the devoted girlfriend for one final performance. "Autumn," I called out, "can you come in here for a minute? We need to talk before dinner." She appeared in the kitchen doorway, and I could see her face change the moment she noticed the papers spread across the table. The guilty expression that flashed across her features told me everything I needed to know about how she'd really spent her afternoon. "What's all this?" she asked, but her voice had lost its cheerful tone. "These are printouts of your emails with Greg," I said calmly. "I got worried when you didn't come home from your walk, so I checked your laptop to see if you'd mentioned your plans to anyone. Imagine my surprise when I discovered you weren't actually walking anywhere." Autumn's face went completely white. She stood frozen in the doorway like she was trying to decide whether to run or attempt some kind of explanation. "I can explain," she said finally, but her voice was shaky and unconvincing. "Please do," I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. "I'm particularly interested in your explanation for spending our anniversary afternoon at the Marriott with your boyfriend while I was picking up flowers for our dinner." Autumn sat down heavily, staring at the emails like she couldn't believe her private communications were now evidence of her betrayal. "It's not what you think," she said, but even she seemed to realize how ridiculous that sounded given the explicit nature of the emails. "Really?" I asked. "Because according to these emails, you've been planning to dump me for months while describing our relationship as mediocre and our future as something that makes you sick. Which part of that is not what I think?" Autumn started crying, but they were tears of panic rather than genuine remorse. "I was confused," she said. "I didn't know what I wanted, and I made some terrible mistakes. But I love you, and I want to make this work." I picked up one of the emails and read her own words back to her. "The thought of being engaged to someone with such limited prospects makes me feel sick. You wrote that 3 weeks ago," I said, "while I was saving money to buy you an engagement ring and planning to propose tonight." Autumn's crying intensified when she realized I'd been planning to propose. "You were going to propose?" I pulled the engagement ring out of my pocket and set it on the table between us. Autumn stared at it like it was evidence of her own cruelty rather than a symbol of love. I said. "I had this whole romantic evening planned. Same restaurant where we had our first date, same table, special dessert. I was going to tell you how much I loved you and ask you to be my wife." "Oh God," Autumn whispered, reaching toward the ring. I pulled it back before she could touch it. "But then I read your emails," I continued, "and discovered that while I was planning our future, you were planning your escape. While I was working overtime to save for this ring, you were complaining to your lover about my limited prospects." Autumn tried to compose herself, switching from panic to damage control mode. "Those emails don't represent how I really feel," she said. "I was just confused and scared about the future." People say things they don't mean when they're confused. For 6 months. I asked. You've been confused for 6 months while carrying on a full relationship with another man. She didn't have an answer for that. I stood up and gathered the printed emails into a neat stack. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm going to go to Romano's and cancel our reservation. Then I'm going to start packing my things, because clearly our relationship has been over for months, and I'm the only one who didn't know it. Please don't do this, Autumn begged. We can work through this. I'll end things with Greg, and we can go to counseling, and I held up my hand to stop her. Autumn, you spent our anniversary having sex with another man while I was buying flowers for our dinner. There's nothing to work through. I walked toward the door, leaving her sitting at the table with the engagement ring and the evidence of her betrayal. Oh, and Autumn, I said, turning back one final time. Greg is welcome to have someone who thinks my career and prospects are mediocre. I'd rather be alone than with someone who sees me that way. The look on her face told me she finally understood that her double life had cost her everything she'd been trying to preserve. I left Autumn sitting at our kitchen table and drove straight to Romano's to cancel the reservation I'd been so excited about that morning. The manager was sympathetic when I explained there had been a family emergency, and he didn't charge me the cancellation fee. I couldn't bring myself to tell him the real reason I wouldn't be needing the special anniversary table or the custom dessert I'd arranged. From the restaurant, I drove to my best friend's apartment. Dexter had been my roommate before I'd moved in with Autumn, and he'd never particularly liked her, though he'd been too polite to say so directly. When I showed up at his door at 8 p.m. on what was supposed to be my anniversary, he took one look at my face and invited me in without questions. What happened? He asked, handing me a beer and settling into his couch. I told him everything. The planned proposal, the emails I discovered, Autumn's affair, and the confrontation we'd just had. Dexter listened without interrupting, his expression growing angrier as I described the scope of Autumn's deception. She's been planning to dump you for months while you were saving for an engagement ring, he asked when I finished. Apparently my prospects are too limited for someone of her caliber, I said, taking a long drink of beer. Dude, you dodged a bullet, Dexter said firmly. If she thinks you're not good enough for her, she was never worthy of you in the first place. Over the next week, I moved out of the apartment Autumn and I had shared. She tried calling and texting constantly, alternating between apologies and attempts to convince me that her affair had been a temporary mistake that didn't reflect her true feelings. But I'd read too many of her emails describing our relationship as a burden to believe that her regret was about losing me rather than getting caught. The most telling conversation came when Autumn showed up at my work 3 days after our anniversary, apparently hoping to catch me off guard and convince me to give her another chance. I ended things with Greg, she announced as I was leaving the plant after my shift. I told him I made a mistake and that I want to work things out with you. That's nice, I said, continuing toward my truck. I hope you're both very happy with your decisions. Don't you care that I chose you? She asked, following me across the parking lot. I stopped and turned to look at her. Autumn, you didn't choose me. You got caught. There's a big difference. That's not true, she protested. I realized that what we have is more important than whatever I thought I wanted with Greg. What we had, I corrected. And what we had was apparently mediocrity, according to your own words. Autumn flinched at having her email language thrown back at her. I didn't mean those things, she said. I was just confused and you meant them when you wrote them, I interrupted. You meant them when you spent 6 months planning your exit strategy. You meant them when you chose to spend our anniversary in a hotel room with another man. I got in my truck and rolled down the window. Find someone who thinks you're amazing just the way you are, I said. And let me find someone who doesn't think my career and prospects are limited. That was the last real conversation we had. Autumn continued trying to contact me for another few weeks, but eventually gave up when it became clear that I wasn't going to change my mind. Through mutual friends, I heard that she and Greg had gotten back together about a month later. Apparently, her brief attempt to choose me over him had been unsuccessful, and she decided to pursue the relationship she'd really wanted all along. 6 months later, they were engaged. A year after that, they were married in an expensive ceremony that, according to social media posts, was everything Autumn had always dreamed of. She seemed genuinely happy with her choice, and I was genuinely happy for both of them. The engagement ring I'd bought for Autumn sat in my sock drawer for about 3 months before I finally returned it to the jewelry store. The manager gave me a full refund without questions, probably assuming the relationship had ended for more conventional reasons than discovering a secret affair through email. A year later, I started dating Meredith, a nurse I met when a coworker got injured at the plant and needed emergency treatment. She thought my career was interesting and important, never made me feel like I needed to apologize for my income level, and seemed genuinely impressed by the skills my job required. When Meredith and I got engaged 2 years later, I used the money I'd gotten back from returning Autumn's ring to buy one that was actually bigger and more expensive. But more importantly, I was giving it to someone who had never made me feel like I needed to prove my worth or justify my life choices. The proposal happened at a casual restaurant where we'd had many comfortable dates, with no special arrangements or elaborate presentations. Meredith said yes enthusiastically and immediately called her parents to share the news, describing me to them as someone she was proud to marry rather than someone she was settling for. Looking back, I realized that discovering Autumn's affair on our anniversary was the best thing that could have happened to me. I learned that someone who truly loves you doesn't spend months describing your relationship as mediocre while planning their escape with someone they consider more worthy. Some betrayals destroy relationships, but they also prevent marriages that would have been disasters from the beginning. The hardest part wasn't losing Autumn. It was accepting that the person I'd fallen in love with had never actually existed outside of the performance she'd been giving while planning her real life with someone else. But the best part was realizing that I deserved someone who saw me as the prize rather than the consolation.